Hey everybody, it's your old pal Trevor, and I just want to give you a quick warning. This episode is on lust, so I use words like urges, and that can be weird, so just be aware of that. Also, I do briefly talk about SA twice, very brief, but still twice, so just so you are aware of that, and if you need to skip that, I completely understand. Oh, hey, everybody, guess what? Valentine's Day is around the corner. You know that Valentine's Day was a day that was originally meant to celebrate two saints, two martyrs, both named St. Valentine, who died because they believed in Jesus. So now, of course, we celebrate it with heart-shaped candies, little cards, and probably some intimate, sexy times. Valentine's Day has always been a weird holiday for me because I've always been single. I've gone from feeling left out and lonely to just feeling happy that people have people in their lives that they can celebrate with. I've always had a very strange relationship with dating. Most of the time I've asked somebody out on a date, it's because somebody told me, hey, you'd be good for each other or you look cute together, and encouraged me to make a move. A move I always messed up.
Bill, that is not sexy.
Yes, it is. Bill, it looks like you're having a seizure. Women love this. They don't care that rerun's fat because he's got the moves.
I think the best example of this was a time when I was in college. I was getting out of a concert, and there was this woman there. She was a friend of a friend who I had met at a church service a week earlier. Me and my friends were going out to Denny's after the show, so it was decided that I would see if she would like to come with us. So I went up to her and said, hey, my friends and I are going to Denny's if you want to come with us. To which she responded that she didn't really enjoy Denny's. So I said, why does it make you poop? And then I stood there in absolute shock.
No.
What?
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to have dinner.
And I just said nothing before excusing myself after a very long, awkward pause. And the worst part of that was one of her other friends, who was a friend of my friend, was also invited by my friend to come to Denny's and ended up bringing her along. So she did come out with us, but did not speak a word to me all night.
Let's just say that if you ask somebody out and they say no, move on.
What if she just says no because she has plans that night? Can you ask her out again for a different night?
Yes. I mean, it depends. Does she really have plans, or is she politely telling you she's not interested?
Which one is it, Sarah?
It's the second one.
Whatever.
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that dating isn't really for me. And yeah, part of that is because I'm demisexual, but also I grew up in purity culture. Oh, hey, thanks for subscribing, thanks for commenting, thanks for liking, and thanks for everything that you do. I put the links down below for the social medias as well as the Patreon, so you could join the party there. I love it when you reach out, so keep doing that, and you're gonna love it. Okay, here we go. 7 Deadly Sins, the final one, the one we've all been waiting for. Let's talk about lust. This is a topic that I've seen a lot of sermons on, and I really thought that nothing would surprise me.
I was asked this weekend if I own a gun, and I said yes. And so I'll show you that. This is not a political statement or an attempt, but there is a gun that is not loaded, doesn't even have a magazine in it.
I wonder if it's loaded. No.
That if I can get it out. This is a Beretta 40 caliber gun.
It's a handgun. Isn't it great? This is the trigger, and this is the thing you point at whenever you want to die.
Like I said, there's no magazine, there's nothing in it.
I didn't have bring a gun on stage on my list of things I'd see in these sermons, but I really shouldn't have been surprised.
And it's a gun that stays in a safe in a very removed up in my shelf in our master bedroom place so that none of my children can get access to it. Because while this thing has great benefits and is it can provide or do great things, in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to use it, it can be incredibly destructive, particularly as it relates to children.
I'm sorry. That locks automatically, right? Like when he shut the door, that means it's locked, right? Like he didn't just lightly close it and walk away. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. That is locked?
That the idea of my children stumbling on or finding that thing.
I live in Canada where we recently outlawed handguns, but in America, they're bringing them on stage at church.
Well, our country is broken. What?
Bucket. I'll just take your biggest bucket of bullets.
Would be incredibly destructive because they don't know how to handle a gun. They don't know what it's for. They wouldn't be able to use it. And if they did use it, it would likely be very, very destructive. Now, what does that have to do with anything we're talking about tonight? Well, just like that's something that I know, because if it falls into the hands of a person who doesn't know how to use it or doesn't know what it's for or doesn't approach it with the same awareness of how destructive it could be, I protect it or I keep it away. I keep it in a place where someone cannot easily access it. There's something else. There's a deadly sin that in all of our lives is something that for most of us, we were exposed to well before we ever knew exactly how to handle it, what it was for, what to do with it. And that's the sin of sexuality, or that's sexual sin.
You know, you could have just brought the safe up, right? And said it's like the kind of safe you keep your gun in. Or you could have just like talked about where you keep your gun and safety precautions you keep without bringing a gun on stage, which totally negates the point of you being a safe person who makes good decisions when it comes to guns. It'd be like if you did this sex talk that you're doing and pulled a Monty Python and had people come on stage and start banging to show that you wouldn't expose them to that.
And then, now, penetration and coitus, that is to say, intercourse up to and including orgasm. Oh, hello.
But yeah, so we're doing lust today. And I guess it's taught by immature man children.
My role in this series is to teach on a subject called Help, I'm Horny.
In our fantasy life, sexually toward others is called lust. And it's one of the 7 deadly sins.
Anybody in here ever been horny? If I don't see 100% of hands, then I'm gonna just pray for the lion spirit that might be on you.
The sin of lust, the sexual sin, defines our lives, defines our culture, and if you're saying you're someone that it doesn't affect or you don't struggle with, you're either dead or you're lying.
The church is pretty good at forgetting that ace people exist, aren't they? Or like any non-cis straight people, I guess.
From the internet, it's a very strong sexual desire for someone. A very strong sexual desire for someone. Hey, I have a prediction that someone will soon be changed to something, okay? Because our culture is getting more and more perverted.
Ugh. You're the worst.
Soon, my prediction, it will be a very strong sexual desire for something. And so we're going to talk about what this looks like in your life. It's 4 activities. 4 activities I think that lust looks like for you. The first one is sexual thoughts and fantasy. Sexual thoughts and fantasy, you beginning to think through things as you drive down the road, just feeding thoughts. Hey, here's what I would do with her. Here's what I would do with him. Or man, did I see his 6-pack as he was playing volleyball? And you're just feeding those thoughts and man, what would it be like to be with that, watching the romantic comedy and just thinking, hey, I want something like that, feeding those thoughts.
Okay, so what you need to understand, if you didn't grow up in this world, if you didn't grow up in this evangelical purity culture world, this is how men behave when they don't actually have an understanding of their own sexuality and they don't have healthy outlets for it. They become weirdos. Like this guy who can't even listen to dudes talk about attractive celebrities on a podcast without getting all riled up.
You're listening to a podcast and out of nowhere they spring up this idea of who's the most attractive celebrity. The 2 co-hosts banter back and forth, throwing out different names of who they find to be the most attractive, comparing and contrasting each one's physical appearance. You listen as somewhat of a passive observer. You don't think it's going to last very long, so you continue on. Oh, well, I don't think that person's very cute, or I don't think that person's very hot at all, or oh, actually, I think this person's pretty hot and attractive. You see, it began as something that you might have considered as harmless, but then you let yourself go down thought patterns that led you towards sin. So that leads us right into our first simple biblical idea. Take every thought captive.
I've been a slave to this sin. Okay, that's what you need to know. If we don't know each other, I've been a slave to sexual addiction.
I don't think we needed to know that. Like, it's fine if you wanted to share that, but we didn't need to know it.
I have sat in that prison. I hope to turn the light on so that you can see the cell walls, because I've lived in it. I've seen the cost firsthand. The third authority is all of you.
Sexual desire or actions that are outside of God's design. So all sexual sins. That includes sexting. That includes it includes having sex, any type of sex outside of marriage. Homosexual sex, heterosexual sex.
Like body rubbing or dry humping.
You could dry hump.
There's masturbation.
Masturbation, play with yourself.
Mutual masturbation.
Play with a friend.
All of that would be included. It includes the idea of lusting after someone in the gym when they walk by and they're wearing Lululemon pants. It includes going to spin class and sitting in the back so you can get a better view of the people in the room.
You see, that's just creepy. This will be a theme throughout. But when you say that it's all equally bad, you get things like this, where people lump in normal behaviors with what this creepy guy at the gym does and thinks they are all the same thing. They aren't.
All of which would fall into the category of sexual sin. I think for most of us, we think that's not that big of a deal. God in his word says it is a huge deal, not just because he's against sex, he's very pro-sex, but because the ways it has destructive consequences and will have and is having in our lives.
What? God is pro-sex? Okay, that's pretty cool.
God created our sexuality. God is the one that created our sexuality. We didn't create it. He created it.
This is genius design, that God created our bodies to function the way they do. He made the parts. He loves sex. It's his idea. He invented it. It's a fantastic idea, an amazing invention. Whenever you experience orgasm, you experience the highest levels of oxytocin that your brain can naturally produce, the highest levels of dopamine that can be produced naturally. These are the feel-good hormones, the feel-good natural drugs in your body. And so sex is the most pleasure, orgasm is the most pleasure that you can experience naturally.
Someone has never had a delicious Arby's beef and cheddar, but okay.
There's a lot of skeptics kind of look at this and they go, well, the reason God tells you to flee and, not sleep around or whatever is because God is anti-sex. Totally not true. Totally unbiblical. Go read the Song of Solomon. Go read through the Bible over and over and over again. God's saying, go, 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 have fun.
I don't know if I've shown these parts in most of the videos I've done, but in almost all of Mark's talks, he brings up this imaginary skeptic person that he has in his mind, and it's never what skeptics actually think. First, most skeptics don't think God has an opinion on anything because they don't think he exists. And it's not really that they think it's a hate for sex, but rather, like most religions and cults, controlling people's sex lives is a really good way to get control of people.
Here's one of the things that, a lot of Christians or a lot of people just think the Bible is anti-sex. God invented sex. He's all about it. On the very first page, the very first command that God gives as it relates to sexuality, as it relates to humanity, not even sexuality, is, hey, Adam, Eve, I created you. Here's what I want you to do. Rule number 1. Be fruitful and multiply. Make babies. On page number 2, from the very beginning, God is pro-sex.
No, he's not anti-sex. He just wants to be weird about it.
When you see somebody, there can be a component of, that person is attractive to me. Now, the question is, how far can that thought go? Jesus answers the question. If you look with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. There's a fine line here, and we should be striving to be as conservative in our approach as we possibly can. You can see somebody of the opposite gender and recognize that form is exciting to me, But it's when we let that thought go and the fantasies begin, the imaginings start happening, and then we perhaps start acting on them because sin is never satisfied and you've gone too far.
There's a thin line between beauty and fantasy. And that's what, see, this is what I love about my wife. She knows, right? If we're in a restaurant or we're in an airport and a beautiful woman walks in, she knows, even if my back's to the door, that I already know she's there.
I feel so bad for his wife.
She just knows that that's me, and we talk about it, and it's something that's an open conversation. I'm not blind. See, there's something inherent in us. God made women beautiful. There's a piece of the creation story that talks about that women, in a sense, are the pinnacle of creation, right? There's stories about guys standing beside the Grand Canyon and they're looking at it, and then a woman walks by and they turn away from the Grand Canyon and they look at the woman. Why? Because that's the way it is. And even other women know this, that women are the pinnacle of creation. And it's true also that women lust toward men. We're going to talk about that in a second. The reality is this is a human problem, and to be naive about it and to bury ourselves is just dumb. And it's naive, and it's to deny the biblical story.
It's funny to me that we think of the people we are attracted to as objectively attractive. Some of what we are attracted to is because of social trends and pressures from society. But for the most part, it's because we evolved to find them attractive. If you were born in any other species, you would find that species attractive, and you would have preferences within that species.
When you start crossing the line in your imagination, you're sinning. You're just sinning. Jesus made it very clear. The same thing is true with anger. It's murder of the heart. God goes a whole lot deeper than what we do externally. He is looking internally at your heart. And when you see somebody that is attractive to you, thumbs up. That is good. That is right. But it is wrong to let it become a sexual fantasy.
God is super picky.
You control your sexual desires or you will be controlled by them. Now, what we have to do up front is you have to self-identify, not publicly, but in your mind. You just need to know right now, hey, is this message for me? Do I struggle with this? Okay, and so let's just ask a few questions, as you think through. Have you seen it in the past 6 months? Have you pursued it? And I don't just mean the traditional sense is it Instagram, hashtag chasing, social media. Have you looked at something? Have you masturbated in the past 6 months? Is that something that you've taken part of? Have you been sexually involved with someone in the past 6 months? Has you gone further than you were supposed to? Has your body, as you hung out with them, began to prepare itself for sex?
Didn't we decide at the beginning of the year that for the good of the group, we wouldn't allow any intimacy between each other or ourselves?
Troy, we never said ourselves.
Okay, now I'm really mad.
We live in a culture that has constantly, since the day that we were born, been feeding us and fueling the distorted desire of sexuality. Feeding every time that I've seen images or every time that I watch a movie and like 15 minutes in, the couple's shacking up and sleeping together. It feeds something as you relate to or as you begin to think about sex. The culture around us continually feeds us. It feeds us this through the music that we listen to. I mean, think about so many of the songs that come out. That's What I Like by Bruno Mars. Yummy, that's coming out. You Have That Yummy. And they got a good beat, but they're feeding something inside.
Music is about a lot of different things. There are songs about peaches. There are songs about growing up in a gangster's paradise. There are songs about what foxes say. But yeah, a lot of songs are about romantic relationships because that's something that people are passionate about. A lot of the times, the songs are about breakups or struggling in the relationships. And sometimes it's about how much that person means to you and how much you love the relationship you're in. And sometimes, yeah, it's about sex. But hear me out. Sex is an activity that a lot of people quite enjoy. And people sing about what they like sometimes. They just want to let people know it was nice that time they did the sex.
Guys, we live in Babylon, all right? We don't live in heaven. We live in a culture defined by lust. Everywhere you go, every commercial, every advertisement, you can be scrolling on your feed. It's bodies, it's sexuality. You could go on news websites, go on CNN, go on Fox News, wherever you're on, it's half-naked girls. Why? Because sex sells. It's money, it's attention. And people who struggle with this sin are constantly fighting it. We have to recognize that. We realize that that's a thing. So don't be naive about it.
The thing is, just because you see something that causes your lust tingle or whatever you call it, doesn't mean that that was the purpose of it. Someone existing while you find them attractive doesn't mean they're existing at you.
Also, TikTok. If you're on TikTok, you should probably get off. But for me, I'm on there, and pretty much every time I see something that tempts me or, some sexually charged content, I block them immediately without hesitation. It's become a routine now. And so every time, I just get used to it, Oh, nope, block, sorry, it's done. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not going to risk seeing this person again or seeing their content again. I don't want it.
The funny thing is about TikTok is that it's an algorithm based on what you look at. So whenever youth pastors or Christian YouTubers say things like, it's nothing but half-naked women, they're just telling you what they enjoy looking at.
Is how desensitized I've become, we've all become, to what 100 years ago would have shocked someone. You think about when people go, and I'm not trying to hate on anybody at the swimming pool. When you go to the swimming pool and you see bikinis, people 100 years ago, your great-grandparents would have been like, why is that girl walking around in her underwear right now? And to us, it's totally normal. And my point is not, right or wrong or whatever. My point is we've become desensitized. Not only that, we have robbed from people the ability to even have the privilege of, hey, the first time I ever saw a woman in her underwear was my wife, or a guy in his underwear was my husband, because you can't turn on the TV without seeing a Victoria's Secret commercial that comes through. You can't drive down the highway without seeing some guy in nothing but his underwear or in a shirt, or just in pants. We've taken that. Culture around us has just fed it and fed it and fed it, and things that would have shocked people before have just become normal. And my point is not, even to zoom in on those, I'm just saying we've all become so desensitized to it.
Temptation. I remember I was watching a movie with my buddy, and we're in a movie theater, and I got so much respect for him in this moment. A sex scene started on the scene. It wasn't like a super explicit sex scene. It was just kind of a normal kind of a superhero movie sex scene, whatever. And he's not married. And so there was a moment where I was just trying to kind of avoid it, and I looked over at him, and he had his eyes closed. And I just kind of stared at him. And he had his eyes closed until he could kind of hear that the sex scene was over. I don't know how he did that, And then he opened his eyes. And then I just kind of, he didn't get up and go, everybody, there's a sex scene. This is inappropriate. Culture, shine. He didn't. He just looked inside his own heart and went, I know what I need to do to fight this.
Sorry, what?
Everybody, there's a sex scene. This is inappropriate. Culture, shine. He didn't.
Call what?
Culture, shine. These thoughts only cause the desires to grow, right? And so you're making it more difficult for yourself. I've said it before. It's like shopping with no money. You either leave frustrated or you take something that didn't belong to you. Those thoughts, you have to act out on them. You'll just get frustrated. And what happens is you just become like you feel dysfunctional. And so you ride an elevator with someone of the opposite sex and you start wondering what's beneath their clothes.
Hello. I guess we'll be going down together. Getting off together.
That's okay. I'll just push the button for the stimulator. Elevator.
You start wondering what his abs look like, or you start wondering, your mind goes to, you wonder, does her bra match her panties? These are the thoughts, and then you go back to your desk, and those thoughts are still spinning, and you feel like you can't work, and you're distracted. What are those thoughts going to do for you? How are they going to help you? You feel dysfunctional.
Again, no, this isn't normal behavior. This is the behavior of people in religions that make them push down their natural desires and their natural urges and remove any healthy way to respond to those desires and urges.
What's your hunk of your horny bumper sticker? Can you help me out or not?
How would I help you out?
I don't know. Do you have a solution? Like some magazines or a calendar or something?
Why would I have that?
What? I thought that you worked for like a service or a company that helped out guys that are so horny that their stomachs hurt. Because that's what I am.
There's no service that does that.
That and a teenage boy who was just going through puberty. It's evangelical men and teenage boys.
as you're raising your kids, you got to understand the way that most of us were actually exposed to this kind of sexuality was a magazine behind some dumpster when you're like 10 years old and there's one page sitting there. Now it's on your phone. And there's no amount of accountability that can keep you from it. And so here's the question. The only way out of it is that you need to want to be out of it, meaning God has to change not what you do, but what you want to do. That's what has to change. And that's why Jesus goes, if you lust after someone in your heart, you've already committed adultery, because the question is, in your heart, what do you take joy in?
And to tell us what sex is about, what sex is like. Maybe somebody showed you pornography. Maybe you didn't stumble into your dad's closet and find a gun, but you stumbled somewhere into your house and you found a Playboy magazine. Or you stumbled in and you found somebody's search history and you saw explicit content that was there. Well, before you ever knew what it was for, and it began to shape, and it shaped all of us as it relates to how we think about sex.
First, yes, we need to make it harder for young kids to access adult material. A lot of it is very dangerous and very damaging for children to watch, and we need to be better at protecting our children. Yes, I agree with that. We need to make sure that this stuff doesn't get into the hands of kids. That being said, at some point, teenagers are going to find a way to look at attractive people and sometimes people who have removed their clothing. You see, I grew up pre-internet. I also didn't have cable. When I was 16, I discovered that certain channels had movies with nudity late at night. So I would get out of bed and go to the living room to watch TV. The thing is, we had an antenna on top of the house that was controlled by a dial in the house that would move the antenna outside, and it was so loud, and it was right on top of my parents' bedroom. So, when my dad told me that the Holy Spirit was telling him that I'd been watching inappropriate things at night, I knew that I had incriminated myself with that dang antenna.
Fast forward about 10 years, I'm 23, and though temptation definitely still rears its ugly head, I began to find real victory in this area of my life over the last few years. I know what it's like to feel that guilt and that shame and that discouragement that comes from falling once again, and yet I can also testify to the fact that freedom is available. But here,
the irony is that guilt and shame part is because of the religious teachings, and not because you have a natural desire that has been keeping our species alive for millennia.
The cost is clear all over our world. The cost of... What is the cost of...
Yeah, I mean, a lot of free sites exist, but yeah, premium packages are usually around $15 a month, unless you get a year's subscription and then you save money. Cheaper than most streaming sites, really.
Emotionally, it compromises you because it trains your body not to bond with a person.
Oh, that cost.
But with yourself. It trains you to want variety, which doesn't prepare you for monogamy.
You know that not everybody wants monogamy, right? Like personally, if I decide to enter a relationship, I would probably want it to be a monogamous relationship. But that's a conversation that I would have with my partner. But not everybody is the same. The key is to talk to the person you're in a relationship and find out what your needs are and see if you can come to an agreement. And then if not, maybe this isn't the right relationship for you.
40% of children now born to unmarried women comes from the CDC. We talk about STDs. Here's the deal. For years and years and years, STDs have been on the decline until our watch, until millennials showed back up on the scene. And now chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, they're back with a vengeance.
Okay, guess who's back, you one-eyed bitch?
And the vast majority, the number one perpetrator is millennials. That's us.
Think about the fact that STDs, now 1 in 3 people have an STD. After years of a decline, chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis are all back with a vengeance, the vast majority of which being contracted by millennials. 10 million millennials this year, or young adults from the ages of 18 to 30, are going to contract an STD.
When they talk about the rise of STDs, they neglect to talk about the rise in abstinence-only sex education.
I think that abstinence has been lacking in much of the education.
It was an idea first funded under the Reagan administration and supported in the years that followed by the increasingly influential religious right.
But in the end, the House passed that budgetary amendment that would cut $3 million out of STD and HIV prevention programs over 2 years and then move that money into expanding abstinence education in schools.
The study says abstinence-only education programs don't work. So how would that possibly justify a $28 million increase in federal funding for these programs? A recent national study concluded that no evidence exists that abstinence programs delay the initiation of sex or reduce the number of sexual partners among teens. This comes on the heels of a long-awaited congressional report released in April that also found that teaching abstinence didn't decrease the likelihood that teens would have sex.
They call them condoms because it's a con job and they're dumb. And we feel like that's what we're telling kids. They're being conned into believing that they can have safe sex. They can't.
I don't want to embarrass anyone. The heart tonight is not to shame anyone.
Shaming people is literally the whole point of this.
But if I said, hey, everyone stand up and sit down if you've had sex with less than 8 people, the majority of you would still be standing. I know that. I understand the problem that I'm speaking to this evening. If I said, hey, everyone's standing, I said, hey, sit down. If you have an STD or you've had an STD, you or someone beside you would sit down. About 1 in 3 here this evening. If I asked, have you ever been sexually assaulted? Before this message is over, maybe 40 or 50 times, every 90, or way more than that, I'm sorry, my math is off, every 98 seconds in America. Every 98 seconds that comes from rain.
And there it is, lumping sexual assault in with sexual activities. When you give a list of things not to do and stuck in the middle is an actual crime that hurts people, and then you teach nothing about consent, then say, but don't worry, God will forgive you for all of this. You are creating an environment that says assaulting someone is the same as, say, seeing someone in their underwear before your wedding night. It's dangerous, and you're just creating assaulters.
He's the most pro-sex being in the universe. Secular studies even show us that the best sex is had by married couples.
Why do these people love secular studies and prop them up as better evidence than their own holy book when it agrees with them, but ignore it when it contradicts what they already believe?
Because good sex is actually hard work, and it takes a lot to understand each other. So one of the things is having a clear picture and understanding what the biblical framework would be to fight lust in the context of marriage. 1 Corinthians 7 is a great passage. Paul goes, look, if you're married, you got to make sure you're actually having sex on a regular basis. Not just because men are dogs or women are dogs and they're constantly wanting it just to feed some sexual pleasure. What Paul actually talks about is its protection, because Satan actually wants to destroy your marriage by making people desire things outside their marriage.
God actually protects our sexuality. He protects it in marriage. Let me tell you something. Sex is so bomb. This is why the enemy comes against it so hard. Sex is, oh, Lord have mercy. Sex is so dope. Sex is amazing. Listen, one of the issues that's happened is that we've told church people, let me be more specific. We've told young people and young adults that sex is bad in church. To the point that on their wedding day, they are paranoid to go have the sex that you told them was so bad that instantaneously turned good because they said, I do. No, sex has always been good.
I love it when they are so close, but totally miss the point. The way churches talk about sex is so damaging. And yes, this is one of the ways we can see that. I've seen marriages destroyed because of this. They get into their marriage bed and realize that they are terrified by sex. The church has destroyed their chances of having a happy and healthy sex life.
Consider God's brilliant design. When one man and one woman, they've not really experienced anything sexually. They come together on their wedding night. It's really awkward and uncomfortable. It hurts. It's not really fun. but they have an entire lifetime to experiment. They don't know what they're doing.
And I think you know what I'm talking about.
You mean penis and vagina?
No, dickhead. Sex.
It's clumsy, but they have an entire lifetime to figure it out together. And as they continue to come together, and he hasn't experienced that with anybody else, she remains the epitome of attraction for him, even when she becomes 50 and 60 years old and 70 years old and 80 years old, his brain continually bonding to her. How beautiful is that? Is God not a genius? Do you see how we've perverted it?
It's fine, I guess. I've heard of hotter things, but, to each their own.
It says this, let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. She's a loving deer or a graceful doe. Let her breasts satisfy you always. May you always be captivated by her love. That is a command in the Bible for you to always be captivated by your wife's breast. Think about that. People think God is a prude. He's not a prude. He wants to protect you from the danger of allowing that desire or that appetite to be used outside of his design, to be used like someone who doesn't understand how to use a gun, because it can be incredibly dangerous or destructive to you and I.
Yeah, no one who's ever read the Bible thinks that God is a prude. That's because of you guys. Some would say he's even a bit of a perv who has a thing for penis tips.
Here's the last one I want you to write down. Male and female sexuality is central to what it means to be human. Male and female sexuality is central to what it means to be human. This is why when we get ready to talk about it with people, people get so defensive. Because God gave it to us, but he didn't give it to us for us to do what we wanted to do with it, the way we wanted to do with it. It has to line up with his intentions.
In another video I made, I said that your sexuality is part of who you are. It's not the only thing that you are, but it's part of who you are. And Christians still comment that that is not true, and that that's a gross way to look at the world. Interesting.
Should fulfill the sexual needs of his wife, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relationships. So Paul says, as it relates to sexual sin, sex outside of marriage, run from it, flee from it. Other times Paul is like, hey, resist the devil, stand firm, be on guard. When it comes to sex, he says, run, run.
Hey, how was church? Oh, it was great. Our pastor is really cool. Oh, really? What did he do? Okay, instead of just saying run, he yelled it. Oh, cool. Yeah, he had a gun too.
So he says, run from it. And then he says, understand how valuable you are. And then pursue Christ. And pursue marriage. The cure for sexual sin or cure for lust.
Honey, when did you know that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with me? I didn't want to look at naked ladies on the internet no more. Greatest love story ever told.
And he directed her sexuality to Adam's. He directed Adam's sexuality to Eve's. He did not give them options.
He actually did, though. It said that Adam couldn't find... He actually did, though. It said that Adam couldn't find a mate among the animals, so God made him Eve, which really shows a lack of planning on God's part.
He did not put Adam to sleep and then make Eve, Margaret, Billy, and Marcus and present 4 or 5 different options back to Adam and say, which one do you like?
Oh, wow.
He said, what I put in you is compatible with what I've put in her. And what I've put in her is compatible with what I've put in him. Well, what if I don't like what you brought me, God? If you don't like what he brought you, you don't have a problem with God's design. You got a problem with his command. I want something else, God. You don't get nothing else. From the beginning, he directed the sexuality of Eve to Adam and Adam to Eve.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm the only one who sees this, but it might actually be dangerous to base our understanding of sexuality and gender on a really old story that also has talking animals in it.
Furthermore, if all of that wasn't enough being thrown at us constantly, what causes lust is oftentimes just our personal experience, our story. Some of you were sexually abused as a child, and it wasn't your fault, and you've struggled with same-sex attraction ever since.
No, 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 1,000 times no. That is not why people are gay, and that is a really damaging belief that only hurts victims of abuse and has no scientific basis.
You're the worst. Okay, she is just saying that to fit in.
And I'm tired of the church dropping threats and bombs on homosexual behavior and not dealing with all this heterosexual sex going on in the church. It's as if you don't have a problem preaching against it as long as it's not two of the same sex in the bed. But you let all these heterosexuals shacking up, living together, on the worship team together, having sex, preaching together, having sex, and then you like, you know what? They just struggling. We praying for them. But you ready to send all the homosexuals to hell. The devil is a lie.
Sometimes I feel relieved when I'm watching a sermon and I see someone that seems to have a progressive view, and then I listen to what they're actually saying. He's not saying we shouldn't judge the gay people. He's saying that we should also judge the straight people.
Jesus tells us to love everyone. I mean, even the whores and the homosexuals, but it's just so hard.
Car came with an owner's manual. And in the owner's manual were instructions for how you are to use that car. Now, if you wanted to, you could take your car and drive it into the lake.
Oh, God damn it, we missed it. Oh, this is great. This is exactly what I was worried about. Great, guys, way to go. You know what, screw it. I'm going in. What are you talking about? We're going in. Not in the water. Yes, we're going in the water. Look, guys, this car was built for this, okay? It's got air intake valves. This is precision British land-to-sea craftsmanship at work. We're going in. We are not missing that boat.
But if you drive your car into the lake, it won't become a boat.
Come on.
Because you feel like your car should be in the water.
All right, I mean, it is an amphibious exploring vehicle, so it should be fine, right?
Just because you feel like your car should be in the water will not turn your car into a boat. Now, if your car was to break down, you should consult the person who made the car as opposed to talking to your friends that just work on cars. Because just because they knew how to fix their tire, they may not know how to fix your transmission. So we refer to the owner's manual when it comes to lining up with what the manufacturer recommends the way this car should run. In the same way, the Bible for believers is the owner's manual, and we look back to it to find out what he wants us to do with our lives. Y'all with me?
I've contained my rage for as long as possible, but I shall unleash my fury upon you like the crashing of 1,000 waves! Begone, vile man! Begone from me!
You know, we aren't actually cars, right? I mean, you can turn a car into a boat. It takes some time. But we're not cars. There are gay animals. There are trans animals. It's a natural thing. We're biological. We're not machines.
Because here's what sometimes people think. They're like, they hear from pastors, or maybe even pastors have told them, like, hey, you know what, sex outside of marriage is not nearly as great as inside of marriage, and it's just not going to be that fun, so don't do it. That's not what the Bible says. The problem with sex outside of marriage is not that it's bad, it's that it is so good. Because sex is so good. So you're going to experience sex and be bonded with someone who is not your husband or who is not your wife. And you're going to be glued in some way to that person. The problem isn't that it's so bad. It's going to be good. Because sex is good. The problem is because it is so good, it bonds you to that person who almost always ends up ripping because the relationship doesn't work out, and you end up ripping a part of you, and they get a part of you, and you leave with a part of them. And the problem over time becomes like this. This is duct tape. If I take this duct tape and I put it on my arm, this is gonna hurt. It rips off hair. And if I continue to do that, and I take it on another person, and I put it on their arm, and I attach it, and I rip it off, and I attach it, and I rip it off. Every single time that I do, a little piece of that person is coming with me. You know what happens over time? It eventually stops being sticky anymore. That's exactly what happens in the context of sex.
I'm sorry, is Jude really using the tape analogy? The thing terrible youth pastors have been using for decades? The thing that makes people who have been assaulted or simply slept with their boyfriend feel like they are now useless and garbage? Yeah, great job, hip cool pastor.
You're the worst.
Jesus never had sex. In his earthly life, he was 33 years old. Never fell to the sin of lust. Why?
I don't know. From what I heard, he got nailed. So,
to kill this sin and take every thought captive, I want to offer you guys a really beneficial resource.
Now they are going to give practical advice like delete apps, get rid of your computer, leave your phone in another room at night, get a flip phone, get software that tells your friends what you look at. And also this video is sponsored by that app. That happened with one of these. And you know what? There's not a lot that I can say about that stuff. I can make little jokes throughout. I could call them nerds. Nerd! But that's just it. It's a solution to a problem that they made up. And it's their attempt to make you feel guilty for having natural urges that people have had for a long time. At least a dozen years. I said at least. Sexuality is a huge topic. And I can't even begin to scratch the surface of all the nuance. Sexuality is a huge topic, and I can't even begin to scratch the surface of all the nuance. But for a lot of us, we still have our old youth pastor or our old pastor's voice in our head when it comes to this stuff, making us feel guilty and making us feel like a worthless piece of garbage. Get them out of your life for good. You're an adult. You make your own decisions. If you grew up around all this crap, maybe start with giving yourself permission to read a book about it. Find like a respected sex blog or podcast or YouTube channel. If you were denied the actual education you needed when you were younger, it's okay to get it now. The guilt of purity culture can stay with you for a long time. And it's just going to be about taking everything one step at a time and when you are ready.
Title of our sex tape.
And if you haven't yet and you want to try things with people, understand that enthusiastic consent is key. Do things with someone who wants to do those things as much as you do. But the main thing is don't be a creep.
I want you inside me.
What?
Oh, hey, what's up? I was just from before.
Deconstruction is a never-ending onion. Layer after layer is removed, and you still find things that you hadn't considered affected you, and that's okay. It's a process.
You know, not everybody likes onions. Cake! Everybody loves cakes. Cakes have layers.
And done. Thanks so much for making it this far. If you know somebody who may benefit from watching it, send it their way. And you are all the best. And thank you so much. You're awesome. Just want to thank Scentbird so much for sponsoring this video. It's been great working with them. They're awesome. So go to scentbird.com, use my code, believe it or not, 5, get 55% off. You smell great. And when you go to events, we love events. People will think you smell great.
Work, Sky Moon.
Sexuality is a huge topic, and I can't even begin to scratch the cervix